this week. There was some technical glitch. It didn't record, but we think we've it sorted. If we don't get it sorted by the next day or two, we're going to re-record it and release it because there was a good bit of content in that as well. So we're going to be recording this one again this evening, and that will be released during the week as well. And the presentations will be sent out to you as well, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. We'll give you the presentation after the course, or after the webinar this evening. Okay, so we'll go on to the first answer the first question. Why? I don't want to do dinner. We'll go on to the first question. Why? Sorry, I heard someone in the background there. Okay, so just to touch on last week, we went through all these numbers in great detail last week. These papers are from Cullen, Riley in the football. They looked at under 18 and under 15 football, and Damien Young in the hurling. Okay, and there's total distance, high speed running, very high speed running, sprint distance, all the way through to max velocity. Now, what we're going to be covering this evening, or the focus of our discussion this evening, is kind of going to be from the sprint distance across the max velocity. So the reps that they cover, 20 meters per rep, the duration of the sprints, the amount of sprints they do, the big number of accelerations and the frequency of them. And then another key area that we're going to be talking on is the max velocity that the players experience in a match. Okay, we're going to talk about training those really. Okay, so the why. First reason we train speed really is reduce injury risk. Okay, so that's probably step one in all S&C's box of things to do, is to make sure that the players are injury free and available for selection. Okay, if they're on the physio's bench, they're out of action. They are no use to the manager. They're no use to the team. We can't get access to them. Okay, so the first thing for any player to have an impact on the team is to be injury free. We've 3 papers, and there's plenty more papers that have found that exposing the players to high intensity running will act as a preventative for creating injury. Okay, so we've 2 options there. We'd option 1 saying that high intensity running is an injury risk, and so we could shy away from doing it in training, but we can never get away from the exposure of that in a match. Okay, so what we'd be recommending is, and the papers are telling us, is that by exposing the players to regular doses of high intensity sprinting, it acts as a robustness effect that actually protects the players from getting injured. So they get used to this stress on their body, particularly their hamstrings, and it acts as a robustness effect. Is that fair enough? Kieran, are you there?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not sure if you're there.
So yeah, no, kind of a protocol in regarding reducing injury risk is kind of, you're looking to give that exposure, as Paul touched on, that every 7 to 10 days. Now they might hit that exposure during the game, and they may have ticked that box for them 7 to 10 days, or maybe during a training session. But it's just important, if we can, especially if we've GPS, that we can monitor players' exposure to speed.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Secondly, then, performance-wise, okay, so developing speed is a huge potential to develop a player's performance. Okay, so what we have here is various papers that are highlighting the importance of speed. The first one up in the top left-hand corner is just a recent article. It was about a speed coach, Martin Bennett, by the Irish Times, and just highlighting the fact that more GAA players are treating speed as a skill, and in their off-season, they're going to speed specialists and the likes of that to try get faster, because they really are seeing the importance of this trait when they're playing the matches. The next one on the left is talking about straight line sprinting as the most frequent action in goal situations in professional soccer. So what they did is they analysed the GPS there, and they found that before a goal or before a goal opportunity, the most frequent physical action was a straight line sprint. And this is similar to Gaelic football, where we kind of questioned last week, but they never get to run in straight lines. They're always twisting and turning and change direction and cutting. Well, what this is actually saying is they actually do quite a lot of straight line sprinting, and it's often in a very important phase of the game, kind of like what we talked about last week, breaking a tackle, breaking in to get a score, or the likes of that. The next one on the right is a study done on an inter-county 20s team in 2018, And this study measured took performance measures across aerobic fitness, jump performance, sprint performance, and numerous other studies. But what they found is that the starters, so the 15 lads who started, or at least the 14 outfielders, scored better or had better time trials across 5, 10, and 20 meters than the non-starters. So again, to us, this is showing that speed is a premium attribute that's going to improve a player's performance. And there's no better way of noticing if a player is good or bad by whether he's selected or not, I suppose. And then the last one there, the NFL Combine. So this is the test battery that they do for players trying to get into the NFL and get a contract in the draft. They place huge importance on the 40-yard dash. It's probably the most important test that they do that all the teams are looking at. So again, it's highlighting the importance of speed across all these different team sports. And add there, Kieran.
Yeah, no, it is just important. Me and Paul were chatting about it, like especially in S&Cs, like we focus so much of our training around injury prevention, which yes, it is very important. But we do GAA 15 to prevent injuries. We do strength training to prevent injuries. We're touched on, which is important, speed to prevent injuries. But there is a performance aspect, not just with speed, but through strength training and plyometric training, that you're looking to increase the performance of your player as well. Other papers as well show that the difference between elite and non-elite soccer players comes down to speed. And then, as Paul touched on with the combine, the 40-yard dash plays a huge bearing on the players. Could be the difference of a couple of million being in the top 5 or top 10 of the draft compared to 30 or 40 in the draft. So it just shows how important speed is and other attributes are for enhancing performance in our players.
Yeah, and then the final one, again, myself and Kieran were preparing, and the lads were preparing for this presentation, and we were just talking about different players that we had exposure to, inter-county players, and we got discussing lads who had gone across to the AFL, so the Australian Football League, and we referenced 3 or 4 players, and each one of them we nearly had a comment, geez, he's fast, yeah, he's fast. Like, so we'd lads like Daniel Flynn, he's super quick. Kayla Mooney up and down, super quick. McKenna up in Tyrone. And who's the loud boy there, Kieran, you're telling me about? Burnham.
As well, and there'll be a few others as well.
Yeah, so again, AFL, again, it's obviously a highlight that they're placing massive importance on speed again. So again, I think what we've done here is we've reinforced how important speed is. And from my experience of talking to coaches, they generally concur with this. It's something that they're always hoping. They never have a player who's fast enough nearly. They're always trying to get him faster, or I wish he was faster. Okay, we'll move on. So, right, the next one. So last week we discussed kind of the demands of the game, and we talked about the distance that the players are sprinting and the likes of this. So judging those numbers, you'd kind of question, should we train maximum velocity, seeing as most of the activity occurs in the first 20 meters accelerations? We'd argue yes, and this is really the reason why. Okay, so what we have here on the left-hand side is an acceleration profile up to 40 meters. The pink is an athlete who can run 10 meters per second top speed, and the blue is an athlete who can run 9.5 meters per second top speed. Okay, but what we're finding is that by increasing max velocity, you're going to actually increase the acceleration profile across the entire run. So you're going to be quicker in the start, in the mid phase, and in the top end speed phase. So by increasing max velocity and implementing max velocity, even though we mightn't get that in a match, we're actually improving the entire performance of acceleration profile for the athlete. And the example there, we took the numbers that were used in this example. If we can knock 100 of a second off a 20-meter sprint, which is the common sprint distance that we do in a GAA match, we're going to improve the player getting to the ball a meter quicker than his previous self or the opposition. So that's a meter separation in getting to the ball before of his opposition, which is obviously a key trait or a key attribute that we want the players to improve on. Do you want to add, Kieran?
Yeah, no, just highlights the importance of training max velocity, that it affects the whole sprint profile. And that 1 meter, as we'll show here now in the clips, can be the winning and losing of matches in Ireland.
Excellent. Okay, next one then. When we talk about this again, should we train maximum velocity? All right, and don't worry, we won't be getting too big into numbers at all tonight. We left all that behind last week, all right? But this is just an example of by increasing max speed, so the maximum potential speed that a player can achieve. So in this graph on the left, we've pre-training speed, maximum speed of 10.9 meters per second. After a post-training intervention, so it was a very successful speed intervention, we're after bumping them up to 11.8 meters per second. So there was pretty much a one meter per second increase on his speed. Okay, so what that has done is obviously it's increased his maximum speed, but it's also increased a speed that players generally are asked to run at. So that'd be 80% maximum velocity. So now his 80% max speed has gone from 8.7 meters per second up to 9.4 meters per second. Okay, so what that has done is it's increased the submax capacity. And then the last one, which is really important, okay, to think about, is if we can increase max velocity, we're going to reduce the energy cost at a set submax speed. So if you can imagine a set speed, let's say 7 meters per second, on the left-hand side, that's going to fall around 80% or 70% of his max speed, okay, 75%. But if we draw a straight line across to 7 meters on the other side, you're going to be down around 60% of his max velocity. So that's going to have a far lesser energy cost on the athlete to move at that speed. So what we have really, what I've experienced across the board through training and even my own experience previously of coaching, we place a huge emphasis and a huge premium on having players really fit. But we generally go after conditioning elements to improve the player's fitness. Okay, what this has shown is we've two options. We can improve the size of the engine, which would be through various conditioning tasks and training, but we can also improve the efficiency of the athlete, which is going to have a similar effect. So we're actually going to fine tune the athlete that they're actually more efficient at covering the distance and it doesn't have the same energy cost. So it's a double-edged sword really, that max velocity is going to improve our potential performance of getting to the ball first, but it's also going to improve our efficiency of spending energy on the pitch. Okay, so we can spend less time conditioning the athletes and more time playing the game we need to.
Yeah, and it just kind of, the more you can increase the ceiling of the player, so to get him faster, as Paul said, everything underneath then becomes that wee bit easier. And the numbers that Derek Hansen has used are sprinters, so just in case if anyone's out there going, my players can't hit 11.8, they are sprint athletes, not team sport athletes. But yeah, no, it's just to highlight the importance of kind of increasing that max speed, increasing the ceiling of your athlete, and then everything else then becomes that wee bit easier, and your percentages are operating on become that wee bit faster.
Yeah, and with that, Kieran, everything operates the same way. So if we had an 8.7 meter per second athlete and we can get them up to 9 meters, that's going to have the same effect, really, isn't it? Like, you know, obviously these are sprinters and the speeds are very quick, but it's the same thought process really holds strong. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exact same thought process, and that the higher you can increase your speed, then the more efficient underneath, and then the percentages of what you're operating at with your speed, kind of for measuring your speed, maybe compared to conditioning numbers, is that, well, if you have the luxury of GPSs, you can individualize it, so you are working off the player's individual max speed, where sometimes on your conditioning numbers you may set a set 5.5 meters per second, and kind of look at your squad across an absolute, but with your speed. For me personally, I like to do it off a relative, and that kind of falls into what we're discussing here.
Okay, excellent. Again, guys, throughout this evening, if anyone has any questions or we've lost anyone along the way, just pop the questions in the box. Mick is going to be keeping an eye on that, and any questions he has, he'll pose them to us, and we'll try to get the answers to you. Okay, the next one then. So that's really what we're doing on the why and the performance aspect. Okay, so the three areas: reduce injury risk, increase performance, and thirdly, increase the efficiency. Okay, so what players can do, the numbers that they can actually fulfill. Okay, the next one then we're going to talk about is a small bit of data on this quote from Mike Young: the game alone is not enough for optimal speed development. Okay, so really what we're doing here is we're putting a sales pitch for why you should implement or integrate a speed part into your training sessions. So what we have here is we have National Football League data from a Division 3 team in 2020. Okay, on the right hand side we have the match data, so the numbers that the players hit on average across all the matches they played this year. Okay, and on the left is the average speed that those players hit in the trainings during this year. Okay, so what we're going to see is that the max speeds range in the match range from 7.7 meters through to 8.3 meters, depending on position. Okay, on the left hand side, what we're going to see is that the ranges are that the data ranges from 8.26 right through to 9.4 meters per second across the positions again. But what we're seeing here is that the players are hitting far higher speeds in the training session than they're exposed to in the match, even though the match is quite high speeds. Okay, so what we're saying here, or what we've identified, is that we can't rely on the match to provide the speed stimulus to increase the player's speed. Okay, if we rely on the match, they're not getting exposure to the maximum speed that they can reach, and that's a key criteria to improving or maintaining speed in an athlete.
Yeah, and then again, it kind of opens up another, just if anyone's going, why there's only 15 players doing the speed part of the session. Well, first of all, before you go on to pitch, have that conversation with your players. So you'd have some players that maybe rehabbing, have had a big workload. So at this time of year, there was Sigerson going on in different competitions. So some players were excused from the speed due to fatigue. Some players were coming back from injury, weren't exposed to the speed just yet. They were more in a rehab stage. Okay, and then even inside the session, then you would have had some players who were kind of gradually working back through the rehab profile. So that's where there's only the 15 players. Other players would have had different focuses or have had different training loads coming into the session. But again, this is a snapshot which we'll touch on when we're laying out the session in the third piece of the presentation. But it's this speed data was gathered kind of your 15-minute warm-up, and then we got 10-15 minutes of speed training in. So it was kind of that 10-minute slot, which we'll touch on later on, where we chased the speed numbers with a gradual increase in warm-up into our speed section.
And again also, it's nearly a sales pitch of why we were trying to encourage you to implement the speed section to our training, is because this data, the match data, we'd probably expect to see similar data, and we can even, I'd say, we'll be able to pull that as well, Kieran, is across the training session where we're using games to deliver the training session. So the small-sided games, conditioning games, the likes of that, we're still not going to ever reach these maximum potentials that the players can hit. And that's a key criteria to developing speed. So we're going to touch on that further again, but it's kind of nearly, the game alone is not enough for optimal speed development. We have to have an isolated stage to really expose them to true speed. Okay?
Exactly.
So that's the why. Last part then, I suppose, we're just going to really just play 3 videos, one after the other. We're not even going to spend time commenting on them. If they don't work for you due to Wi-Fi or any issues, don't worry about it. They'll be sent through to you afterwards. But really, it's just an opportunity just really to celebrate or highlight the importance of speed across hurling and football, and how they can have a real game changer effect on it. And it's a real premium attribute that we'd encourage everyone to develop. Hopefully they work.
even just from that last one, just kind of that 1 meter we chatted about in the earlier slide, you can see how important that 1 meter came to stay away from Moran on the strike for goal.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose these 3 clips are probably unique, and it's probably something that we have in the GAA, particularly in relation to video. We constantly follow the ball, okay? But so these were unique that we're able to catch these clips of a player like traveling up to 40, 50 meters with the ball and breaking through, and they're quite hard to find. But what you'd find is most of our runs, our speed work is actually going to occur off the ball. So getting into position, getting on the end of something, tracking back. So these aren't, like, fair enough, these don't happen that often, and when they do happen, they can be very important game breakers. But think about Moran's run was just as important. He was unlucky not to stop him. We were only commenting before we came on how close he got to stopping him, and it's a lot of that defensive work also that occurs. So that we yes, Daniel Flynn, Jamie Barron, and Owen Merchant's runs were very impressive, and it just shows how important speed is. But also, if we rewind them and we watch the defender, or even off the ball activity, we're going to see a lot of high speed work as well. Okay, so that's my sales pitch. That's the why. That's why we're asking you to listen up for the next half an hour of the how and the what. But really, we can't place it enough when all S&C coaches or all athletic development coaches, everything we're doing towards the gym, right through from plyometrics, on-field activity, it's always about the premium of trying to improve the speed of the players. Okay, that's the means test of the standard of player in these sports. Okay, over to you, Kieran.
Yeah. So yeah, we're just going to touch on the what. So what is acceleration? What is max velocity? And what do we need to look for when we're coaching it? So just to give some key pointers for coaches when they do introduce it to their sessions. If you want to flick there, Paul. Okay, so obviously throughout this, okay, throughout the what section, we will be comparing our team sport athletes to our sprint athletes. Okay, a lot of the work will come from Altus, Stu McMillan, Dan Paff, etc. But we're not expecting our team sport athletes, and we're not expecting coaches to turn our team sport athletes into sprinters. But it is important that the players understand the rules of acceleration and upright sprinting. Okay, so if a player can get to the ball that 1 meter earlier in good running position or good running mechanics, it has a better outcome. The player is able to look around, see what's happening. But if he's falling into the ball, or when he turns possession over, if he's falling forward, okay, he's not going to be able to influence the game that much. Okay, so kind of your physics and how the body moves and what way you want to project your body is the same regardless of if you're a sprinter or a team sport athlete. So it's just to give you some key pointers to look for off the gold standard, but don't get caught up in trying to turn your team sport athlete into a sprinter. This is not the point of what we're trying to do in the what. Okay, anything you want to add, Paul?
No, excellent.
Okay, so we'll touch on acceleration first. Okay, so when accelerating, your main aim is to project your body forward. Okay, to do that, you got to produce horizontal force. By doing that, you're striking your foot position behind your center of mass. Okay, so your front foot is the foot you're pushing through the floor. Okay, and your back leg is the leg you're punching forward. Okay, so you're looking to produce force horizontally. Okay, by projecting yourself, by pushing into the ground behind your center of mass. Okay, so kind of three points from Altus is your projection. Okay, projection out of the blocks for a sprinter, or in Paul's picture here, you're trying to project yourself forward away from the defender or the attacker. Okay, then you've got your rhythm, so you're kind of transitioning, you're rising, and your rhythm, you're getting into your sequence of foot contacts. Okay, and then you're rising gradually and getting taller and taller as you go down the pitch or down the track. Okay, so when coaching it, you're looking for that projection forward. Okay, and then if you track the center of mass and watch it rise as the player moves down the track or the pitch. Okay, but it's important that we focus on producing force horizontally, punching that knee forward. Okay, like a piston action, and then that you're striking behind the center of mass. Okay, so player will have a variance of how far to strike behind the mass. Okay, but it's just a key point to look for when we're coaching it on the pitch. You want to flick? Or...
No.
Yeah. Okay. So we just compared a sprinter and a team sport GAA player, obviously Jack McCaffrey here. Okay. So on the sprinter, obviously that's your gold standard as again. Okay, but you can see some key features in both picture. Okay, so when you're sprinting or when you're accelerating, you're looking for that triple extension. Okay, you want to have that positive shin angle. Okay, so shin angles we won't touch on a huge pile tonight. It is important, but when we move to the agility, it becomes very important. Your shin angles and what position your shins in is nearly like your steering wheel. Okay, whatever way your shins are pointing or projecting, that's where the body wants to go. Okay, so obviously in acceleration, we want to project forward horizontally. Okay, so as you can see here with Jack, then okay, triple extensions, okay, could be a wee bit better, but he's fast, so we probably wouldn't mess around too much with Wadham. But you can see the positions that he's in. In regards to arm swings, okay, yeah, for a sprinter it's important, not as much for a team sport athlete. Usually they have the ball in hand, or they're jostling with their opponent, or they're looking to see what the next move is. Okay, so it's not a huge focus for a team sport, but obviously for a sprinter it is quite important. So what you're looking for really is that triple extension, okay, that positive shin angle, and striking behind the center of mass. Okay, you can see where Jack's foot is, it's behind his hips or behind his arse. Okay, so what we're kind of looking for, and then the other leg will strike back there, and the other one will punch forward. Okay, so that hashtag comes from Derek Hansen as well. Okay, so be the hashtag, as you can see here, the examples on above. You got anything there, Paul?
Yeah, I suppose this one really reinforces that first quote you put up about the athletes must know the rules before they break the rules or before they bend the rules. And this is an example where Jack is in a really good acceleration shape. It's not ideal to the sprinter, but it's a shape that is going to put him down the field very quick, okay, or it's going to be a really good strong acceleration position. It's very hard in these stills to identify exactly where it is, but that's what we're trying to get across, that if we can train as close to model shape of the sprinter as possible, as much of it's going to hang on when we get onto the pitch or in where the ball and all is involved. Whereas if we kind of say, yeah, well, they don't get to do that because the ball's in play and they don't get to run like that because someone's hitting them. Well, there is no opportunity for lingering effect or for a player to understand what is a good acceleration shape or what is a good running shape. Okay, so we have to realise again that it'd be a good match. Now, I know Kieran Kilkenny, he changed the game altogether in relation to possessions there a couple of years ago when he was just running around the field after the ball. But generally, you're looking at somewhere between 15 to 35 possessions is a huge amount. Okay, so there's a lot of time when we don't have the ball. Okay, so there's a lot of time where we actually can get into really good strong positions, good arm swing and the likes of that. So the better we can put the players in them acceleration shapes, and we're going to look on Max V and X in the other shapes, they are going to be better at running, and running is a key part of the game. I'll skip on for you there.
Yeah, please, Paul. Okay, so just kind of to reinforce what we said previously. Okay, so in your acceleration position, you want your positive shin angle, striking behind the center of mass, okay, and producing as much force as possible. Okay, so you'll see in the green, the tick positive shin angle. Okay, so kind of some common mistakes we see is that negative shin angle. So your foot contact in front of your hip. Okay, so creating that braking force. So sometimes if you're running your speeds or acceleration session on the pitch, you might see an athlete fall forward. Okay, that could be one of two things. He's falling forward over his knee. That's in front of his center of mass. Okay, or it could be that his body shape or his upper body shape is geared towards heading for the floor. Okay, so just one or two things to watch out for. Okay, that could start a conversation with the player. Okay, we need to work on this. Okay, you could maybe pull that player to the side, let your assistant coach run it, and the session you could video him, see what's going wrong. Okay, so it's just kind of one or two things to look out for. Okay, we have our gold standard and our positive shin angle. Okay, and then we've got our kind of mistakes. One of the more common mistakes to look out for in that negative shin angle. Okay, so again, just to re-emphasize, it's the knee drive. Okay, and that strike behind the center of mass is kind of your main points in your acceleration that you want to look for, and obviously moving horizontally as well. Okay, so we'll just kind of transition or move on into max velocity. Okay, in our team sport athletes, we usually see this in 30 to 40 meters. Okay, some of the elite sprinters, Usain Bolt might be near 70 meters. Okay, so the main difference between max velocity and acceleration is obviously you're in that upright position and you're producing force vertically more so than horizontally. Okay, and you're trying to produce as much force in a minimum amount of time. Okay, so you are upright, you're producing vertical force. Okay, your foot should be coming in underneath your center of mass. Okay, or just slightly in front. Okay, so a big difference from acceleration where it's behind your center of mass. When we're in our max velocity phase, we're producing vertical force, and our foot strike is pretty much under center of mass, slightly in forward. Okay. So just two key differences between acceleration and max velocity.
Yeah, so just to add to that, if we can understand, so as we're coming out, we're getting the fastest place when we're in a stationary position or a slow position. If we rise slowly, as we pick up speed, if we keep going at that trajectory, we're going to fall over. We won't be able to get our legs out in front of us in time. So as we keep increasing speed, we start rising up this way and our legs start spinning and keeping that kind of momentum going. So that's kind of the key thing. So think of it as nearly a plane taking off or rising. We're going so fast now that to maintain that speed, we need to get our legs directly under our body, or else we're going to fall over. So that's kind of the key thing.
To re-emphasize tracking that center of mass, tracking the hips, and seeing how it's moving. If you will see at times a player when they're accelerating, it'll just pop straight up. Okay, so it's just then teaching them to stay low. As the example Paul used, that airplane gradually increasing as they go down the pitch. Okay, so again, this is your gold standards, your sprinter. Okay, this is a kilogram by Altus. Okay, and Cameron Jose. Okay, so the kind of two things we really want to focus on here is our posture is upright. Okay, so upright, neutral. Okay, he's not leaning back and he's not leaning forward, putting any extra strain on the body. Okay, so nice upright posture. Okay. Second important thing to watch is your reduced backside swing. Okay, so if that heel is staying really high out behind the body, okay, just where Paul's tracking it there on the mouse, okay, is not what we're looking for. Okay, to see that, it'll affect our front side. Okay, so if there's a lack of knee drive, okay, it's to check what's happening behind. Okay, so when we're sprinting in that posture, in that upright neutral position, we're looking for that knee drive. Okay, we're looking for that punch forward just slightly in front of the hip. Okay, as we move down, we want to attack the ground. Okay, so vertically, we want to attack the ground from high. Okay, so like what we said, attacking the ground underneath your hip. Okay, not behind, so underneath your hip, so underneath your center of mass. Okay, and then a stiff ankle. If your ankle is plantar flexed or is really loose, okay, you won't be able to absorb any of the forces. Okay, so you just you want to have a stiff ankle so you can absorb the forces and keep bouncing down the track. Okay, so the three things to really look out for is you're being upright in a neutral position. Okay, and then go to see how the knee drive is, see where his knee drive is. If it's low or there is none, okay, just have a wee look of why, cue it, see what's happening. If it's not coming, have a wee look behind. Okay, they're probably the two or three things to watch out for. But again, don't get caught up in this. These are sprinter examples. We're not expecting our team athletes to look like this, but if we can give them a small experience of what it might look like, it may benefit them. We will hopefully get them faster alongside everything else that we're doing.
And again, like this is like anything. So it's when we started trying to teach hurling or football, like, you know, and we could thinking about head, hands, feet, and those analogies, the way we went from static through to dynamic and stuff like that, and all our skills. This is the same idea from a coaching context. So if you're not familiar or you're uncomfortable with these shapes, you nearly start on one. Like, so in a max velocity, or when a player's trying to run as fast as he can, what's his posture like? And you might just look at that for the first couple of weeks, you know. So this can be built in. You don't need to fix everything in one go. I'm still learning a lot of this stuff, trying to fix shapes and stuff like that. Like, you know, there would be stuff that I wouldn't see that Kieran, or even I had a good few conversations with Marcus Lawler, the 200 meter national champion, he'd be telling me stuff or showing me stuff that I'd be like, geez, I didn't see that at all. Like, you know, so it's kind of, it'll come through experience, but kind of just fixing one bit at a time or trying to learn one little bit at a time. You can get an eye for this stuff. It's all coaching, and the majority of people on this have experience in coaching either hurling or football. So your eye is tuned to spotting and fixing and supporting athletes.
Just on that, Paul, just a question in there in relation to the MVP part of the, if you could just elaborate on that part.
Yeah, so it's your it's your maximal vertical projection. Okay, so it's kind of going to be kind of where you're highest off the ground. Okay, so it's where your vertical projection is. So from there, so that's what it stands for, your maximal vertical projection.
And it's probably one of the least. It's probably one of the least areas we focus on is the maximal vertical projection, you know, because it's kind of hard for the athlete. They'll fix it through the other aspects. So they'll fix it through having a good posture, reducing the backswing and driving the knee through. It's kind of the other parts that will actually help the athlete. And the maximal vertical projection is nearly a byproduct of it. Isn't that fair enough, Kieran?
Yeah, so it's the force you're producing kind of the step beforehand, and then how your legs swinging when you're in the air or you're in that vertical projection phase. So it's kind of having what's good either side of it, and what's happening in the air more. So yeah, it's kind of a byproduct of what's happening either side of the strike.
Okay, we'll flick on.
Okay, so just kind of to give you a picture of what acceleration top speed looks like. Okay, there is other aspects we could look in, muscle contraction, and different elements like that. But just for tonight, we're just going to touch on two obvious things. Okay, so you can see, as we touched on, in your early acceleration phase, okay, so your ground contacts are longer. Okay, so you're applying more force into the ground, okay, to try and project your mass forward. Okay, so again, horizontally, you're going to spend longer time in the ground. As you transition to max speed, your contacts on the ground become lighter. Okay, your force produced in the early acceleration is higher, and when you transition to top speed, you're not producing as much force. It's more to do with your elastic energy, so that bouncing effect into your maximal vertical projection from the previous slide. Okay, so it's more to do with your elastic energy. Again, it does vary between athletes. Dwayne Chambers, for example, would be more a muscle mass sprinter, so he would try and produce more force, where Usain Bolt would be more of an elastic sprinter, would be that kind of more of a bouncier athlete. And the same would apply in your team sport. You can see the players that are bouncier, and you can see the players that are more carry more muscle mass and more trying to produce force. So you will see it in both.
And Kieran, like Joe, these ground contact times and even this shape of the athlete, really, I'll throw this one up for you. You can see where you go with it. Ladders, like, you know, we've all been through sack ladders, speed, agility, quickness ladders, and the likes of this. Like, you know, are these going to improve acceleration, or what's the story?
Yeah, well, for me, not a huge fan myself. Okay, obviously you're moving laterally. It's more to do with foot contact, so your frequency. Okay, you're not producing a huge amount of force. Okay, it might be handy for coordination, even for young athletes learning deceleration. But for reducing force, trying to project your body horizontally, trying to produce vertical force, okay, you're not going to get that same effect from doing ladders. But for maybe youth athletes, for coordination, even for the basis of kind of that deceleration, when you're standing on one leg on the far side of the ladder, or hopping through it, would have an effect. But for training speed or even agility, producing force to move your body, move your hips to manipulate your opponent, ladders, I wouldn't put a huge focus on. But as I said, for youth athletes, it would have a benefit.
Add to that, like, you know, what we're seeing or we've heard before, and the likes of that, you know, quick feet, trying to get going or get moving, short steps, quick sharp steps to start, really. And what we're really asking you, or really spelling out to you this evening, is actually, no, we want big, strong, long steps at the start, like, you know, where you're really striking the ground behind you, punching the knee through, really aggressive, and they're going to be quite slow ground contacts, and it's each step is going to be that quicker off the ground until we keep just growing and growing. So the ground contacts at the start, that first step, second step, third step, that's all about creating force through the ground. It's not about turning over the legs really fast. Is that fair?
And just on that, Paul, as well, we have a question coming in, Paul and Kieran, in relation to using hurdles with teams to enhance max velocity.
Yeah, do you want to go? I'll go first, or
Yeah.
No, for me, yeah, brilliant, brilliant way to train an athlete. Obviously, Altus and a lot of the sprint coaches would use them. For me, yeah, if I had the luxury, yeah, as in regards, if you've 20 to 30 players on the pitch, it can be quite difficult. Obviously, you need a lot of hurdles or cones, whichever you would decide to use. So I wouldn't kind of use them as across a whole squad, but one or two players that I may identify that may have an issue. So if they had a bit more, if they lacked the knee drive and did more of a backside swing, okay, it'd be something maybe I would get him to focus on, alongside when the session's running, where he'd be using the wickets and trying to focus on the issues he'd have. So it would be kind of more of an intervention, more so than across the board with a squad, just mainly because of sheer numbers. It would be hard to.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, there has to be an element of individualization in the spacing of the hurdles and the wickets to get the full benefit out of them, you know. So you nearly need to categorize the athletes based on their stride length, where we might be trying to increase that length that little bit. But if you've a shorter athlete with a shorter stride, or just a natural shorter stride, he's going to need an alteration in the distance of the wicket. So they're excellent. They're a really strong tool. It's just kind of, there's an element of individualization. So as Kieran said, I'd probably use them in a more individual or a couple of player intervention style, as opposed to everyone's doing wickets tonight or everyone's doing hurdles tonight. Wickets and hurdles are kind of the same thing.
And even just your setup time, by the time you might only get 2 reps on wickets, depending on what the session of or the focus of the session is in regards football. So again, it's another thing just to weigh up if it's time effective, but as well as points Paul highlighted.
Okay, we'll roll on, yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so just for some considerations for youth, okay, so during their pre, post, and during peak height velocity, okay, in regards coaching and the angles and the positions, okay, it doesn't change hugely between age. It's just how you might do it, okay. And as your athlete matures, okay, kind of pre peak height velocity, okay, there's a lot more going on with the central nervous system, okay. So you will see big improvements on your speed, okay. And when they come out the other side of their peak height velocity, it's more to do with their hormones and muscle mass, okay. So the speed increases won't be as great, okay, and that's kind of male and females kind of coming up to peak height velocity. They'd be quite similar in speed, but when they come out the other side, there's a lot more kind of a hormonal response in males, so that kind of separates in regards speeds, male and females. And other things then to look for is kind of how the players with their height increase as they go through peak height velocity is their stride length will increase, but also then the force, obviously with their increase in hormones, increase in muscle mass, okay, the force they can produce on ground contact, okay, is a lot greater. So these are kind of 2 reasons how speed will improve, okay. Again, then combining it with what you're doing in the gym, plyometric wise, we'll all have we'll all have a positive effect on sprint speeds. But then again, a lot of research at the moment going into resisted sprints, either with bands or prowlers, okay, and it's having a huge positive effect on sprint mechanics and specific strength qualities in youth athletes. And the same with everything, strength, plyometrics, speed, football sessions, okay, you got to consider the maturity at the training age of your young athlete to create a fun environment, okay. If they're young, there might be more games, okay. So it is just important to look at your athlete in front of you and see where they are in their development. For speed, obviously, as we're discussing here, but in regards strength, plyometrics, football, how you're coaching. So it is important to weigh that up for across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And on this one this evening, I suppose the content this evening, when we get into the how as well, it's primarily going to concentrate on that kind of projection and kind of exposing the athletes to reps of the activities and kind of trying to fix a little bit of mechanics, maybe through a few drills and those activities. There's a whole other aspect of plyometric strength training, and we are going to try and target that or speak about that in future webinars. And even we're going to have the GAA Leinster Youth Resistance Training course and all. So there is a whole different side of improving strength of speed as well through strength training, so that ground force production side. But this evening is primarily based on coaching the projection side. So can we get their mechanics and their shape really well? So from that point of view, really we're just teaching the skills of speed. So there should be no real concerns or worry, even though there shouldn't be anyway. But like, you know, this is extremely safe stuff to do. The other one, I suppose, flipping that in relation to safe to do, a key concern or a key thing that you must consider with speed training is the status of the players you have. So what's the load on them in their week, or like, so how many teams are they involved in? How much other training have they done? Are they playing schools football or rugby or hurling or soccer? You know, so if they have a high load, running or sprinting at max velocities or max speeds and max intent is extremely taxing on primarily the central nervous system, and if their load is too high, they will be at increased risk of injury. So it's kind of as Kieran said at the start when he was referencing the players who took part in the speed session. If any players returning from injury has played Sigerson football that week or is just not feeling it, the first thing to go to make sure that they can play hurling or football is the speed session goes. So it's kind of be aware of that as well, and kind of just always have that in the back of the mind. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, and then just one thing we didn't touch on there is kind of with your younger athlete, you are looking to focus more on acceleration before moving into your max velocity, and then even before going into your repeated sprint type of work. So kind of working on that acceleration, so building that short to long.
Just on that, Kieran, as well, we've got a message coming in there from Mike just in relation to some examples of drills and activities to enhance speed for under 15s down.
Yeah, well, there's we'll be kind of in the next kind of part of it. There's a YouTube channel, and there'll be some video demos of what we're going to discuss, and then we can share resources. There's a lot of resource there, even on the Leinster website and the GAA website, in regards fun games for that kind of even younger age group again.
And then just a message from Maddie Brady. How would you deal with an athlete going through adolescent awkwardness in regards to speed?
For me, I wouldn't kind of make a big deal of it. Okay, obviously, whatever the different issues he may be going through, and you would kind of just correct and just kind of give him advice, things to improve it. But I would still try and focus on kind of learning them shapes. Okay, obviously the training load that he could tolerate, he'd be looking to reduce, especially if he's playing a lot of other sports. So it is important to monitor what he's done, as Paul said, and what training load he's had. But I would still try to teach him the right shapes, especially in acceleration. There is a kind of wee bit of research out there that players that are kind of have been exposed to these positions pre-peak height velocity or during peak height velocity, when they come out the other side of it, they'll find the positions a lot sooner than someone who's had no exposure, to any of the kind of mechanics of acceleration or max velocity. But again, it is hugely important not to obviously kind of embarrass the kid that you're pulling him out in front of the group and using him as your demo, but kind of chatting to him and just coaching him as normal and kind of giving him that wee bit of advice, helping him. And the big thing is obviously watching his train load, that you're not overexposing him to too much where it may cause injuries or kind of growth injuries, but still teaching them the right shapes and to get into in a controlled environment and a safe one.
Yeah. That's the exact same. I'd continue as is, trying to coach the shapes and stuff like that. A key thing I'd just be extremely concerned with, or just very aware of, is his load. They're at increased risk of injury and growth injuries and the likes of that during these growing phases, really, like peak height velocity and the likes of this. So it's kind of let him tip away and just be aware of his load, and probably give him advice based on his load as well. You'll generally find that these boys are playing across 4 and 5 teams and stuff like that, so it's just a key thing to consider.
Yeah, it might be, you mightn't give him exposure to speed if he is struggling to hold certain things. You might just focus more on acceleration, but it would depend on the athlete in front of you and what he can hold. But again, I would definitely be teaching him the certain positions for when he comes through his peak height velocity, which I think it's important to monitor right through up until the early 18, 19.
And both of you have just touched on it there as well. A question from Tracy coming through in relation to players playing lots of other sports, and is there anything that we can do to educate them on taking responsibility themselves to spread the load?
Difficult one. Very difficult. Like what we're highlighting here, the fact that speed is very trainable, and it's a desirable trait that the players will want. And then we're also highlighting the fact that it needs to be used and treated very carefully because it's quite taxing, So, yes, we want players to play across multiple sports, and we want them to have loads of exposure to activity. But are they going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none? And it's kind of getting that balance right. We're kind of, I suppose, what would you say, guidelines coming from some of the organizations will be recommending you're nearly going from maybe 5 sports down to 1 between the ages of 12 to 15 or 16. Maybe 2 at 16, but you kind of need to do a little bit of specialization. There's a huge benefit in keeping as many sports going through those development years, but it is again kind of trying to get the balance right between workload. Des Ryan actually has a really good presentation on it that he delivered at the GAA conference this year or last year. I was just watching there recently. So they're actually encouraging their players in the Arsenal Soccer Academy during those adolescent years to actually get exposure to various sports, but it's all through the asterisks of making sure your load is appropriate. So it's just a key thing to be aware of.
Yeah, and again, it is hard in the GAA because there isn't kind of one person controlling what the players are doing, but it's again that communication line with your player or parents, that if they had soccer the night before and they're Gaelic training the next night, that if there is a speed session, you may just work on the posture drills, which we'll touch on, against the wall, and that could be the height of it for that player. It's just maybe looking to microdose it in across the week, but if the coach or the S&C coach isn't with every squad, it's quite difficult to get unity in what you're trying to coach. But again, it's just kind of adjusting your session to fit. So again, might be no max velocity work, might just be acceleration, as I said, posture drills against the wall, doing them 3 times a week if he's out 5 days a week, which wouldn't add a huge amount of moving load, but just teaching different positions. But again, it is a difficult one to try and control, especially at a young age. And then again, different bosses across the different sports. But as Paul said, it is important that the players don't specialise too early, and that they can get exposure to a lot of different sports, even off-pitch sports like gymnastics and different sports like that. Doesn't necessarily have to be another team sport experience.
Yeah, and in that, it's nearly, and this could nearly be something for you to think about in relation to a club capacity. So there's great value in a player maybe playing various sports that are developing different attributes of his athleticism, but it's kind of the lad I'd be more concerned of is the lad who's playing across 3 different age groups of the same sport, and he's just getting loads of exposure to the same stress and the same activity. So multiple matches in the week, kind of not really training that much. He's just kind of nearly repeating the exam over and over again all the time, trying to develop. Like, Joe, that'd be the lad I'd be more concerned about than the player playing across at least 2 or 3 sports. That'd be something to consider as well. We are going to actually, in our maximizing training adaptations, we're going to really look at loads and kind of different ways that we can possibly understand loads and track loads and stuff like that. So we are going to try tackle that in webinar 4 or 5. I think it's 5. So we will give that a bit more time and detail in a couple of weeks' time. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's that.
Okay, we'll roll on. So we've done there is the what. Again, I think myself and Kieran are very strong in this idea of that the shapes that we're just describing and spelling out there in relation to running, they can be quite daunting if you're just being shown this evening. Okay, so what we'd probably recommend is you're going to be able to learn these over time. We'd encourage you to try learn the shapes and understand what good shape looks like and what a good model looks like. We're not trying to make them into sprint athletes or track athletes, but we're kind of saying, look, here's a shape and a model that you can kind of nearly see how close the player's getting to, and it'll give you some guidance and a kind of something in your head that when you're giving feedback or when you're trying to compare that athlete to a model, you have something to look at. If you can't figure it out, or you say, oh geez, I won't understand that, you don't have to just give up on speed. Like, Joe, this can be built in over time. Even just exposing the athletes to the right activities, even if there's no correction intervention going on, you're probably still doing a bit of good as well. So that's what we're going to look on next. So I know it's quite challenging, or what we went into there is quite detailed, and Kieran did a great job in explaining it. But I am aware that we have a lot of coaches in here that are looking at this stuff for the first time. So just nearly a little bit of reassurance that you can get it and you will get it over time, and don't be too put off by kind of that shape part. Is that fair, Kieran?
Yeah, and then if there is coaches that may have a keen interest in this, like kind of reach out to your nearest kind of sprint coach or athletics club that may be there. Like the most learning I did was working along S&C coaches who had a track background. That's where I learned the most. So if there was someone or S&C coaches on it that have a keen interest and wanted to develop it even more, like reach out to your local athletics clubs or your local sprint coaches. I think they're actually, the athletics is allowed back already in the phases of the coronavirus phases. So it could be something to do if you have a wee bit of extra time to just go down and observe from 2 meters.
Okay, excellent. So next we're going to move on to the how. Okay, so this is kind of nearly providing guidelines and talk about some drills and activities we're going to use. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is nearly the fundamental guidelines of what should be involved in building a speed session. Okay, so the first one we're going to look at is intent. Okay, intent is a very important part of speed training. In speed training has to be performed at max intensity. So we're looking at intensities that are 95% and above. Okay, there's a famous quote made by Mike Young, one of the coaches that we were talking about earlier on. If you're not sprinting is not sprinting. So if you're going at 80%, 90%, that is not sprinting. That is not going to create the adaptation. You need to be going with maximum intent to create those adaptations and to improve your speed. Okay, how do we develop these? Okay, or how do we create max intent? Okay, so what we'd recommend is a couple of ideas: building in competitions into your activities. So races, time trials, chases, the likes of this is really going to push the athlete into really pushing the boundary and trying to go as fast as he can. Now, this has to be built in again, that, you know, during the early phases where they mightn't be ready for a reactive stimulus, that we just have them going as quick as they can, and might be through a time trial with a stopwatch or just trying to beat themselves, you know. So that's kind of where we build in these activities as required. We don't want them to get caught up in the go and trying to sort out their feet in that phase. We're very conscious in we want them to get their pattern right, and it might be building towards the reactive race or something like that. But competition is a really important or a really easy way of ensuring that the athlete is trying to run as fast as he or she can, and that's a key trait or a key component of speed training. The next one then, rest. Okay, so again, really, really important. Okay, we need full recovery between every run we do. Okay, so what we use, I'm not going to get into the science really, but what we have is we various energy systems going from alactic, anaerobic, aerobic. Okay, and for sprinting, we use primarily the alactic system, especially in the acceleration phase. Okay, and that's what we're training. If we don't allow that to fully regenerate and fill up again, and we run too early, we're gone away from speed and true speed development, and we're gone into another conditioning element. It could be anaerobic conditioning and even into aerobic conditioning. So what we're encouraging you to do here is, for every 10 meters that you run or the athlete runs, we're looking for you to give them 45 to 60 seconds rest. Okay. Again, I talked about that speed versus conditioning. So we're leaning towards speed, and this conditioning is obviously very important, but to develop true speed, we need to get full recovery. And I suppose we put this in because we're very aware of it. It can be quite challenging to implement, especially for the players who will feel recovered. You want to get on with the session, time is of a premium, but we're trying to ask you to hold firm on this, that you're looking for 45 to 60 seconds per rep. And it's a key thing that if we can actually train this earlier in the athletes, by the time they come further along the line, they'll understand that this recovery or this phase of training requires full recovery and also increases intent. So when they know that they only get to go, if they're running 30 meters, they only get to go 1 rep every 3 minutes. Well, then they're going to make sure that that rep really, really counts. And there's no point kind of half going through it. Okay, so it's kind of, they can work side by side. How we fill that rest, and we had a good chat about this today, myself and Mick. I'd be encouraging you to stick to focus of speed. So if you want to fill it maybe with some coaching guidelines, like, you know, or some feedback on their mechanics and their shapes, brilliant. The other ways we can do it as well is probably being a bit more aware of how we plan the session. So rather than putting the 30 athletes or the 30 players across the line and everyone running together and then everyone having to stand around looking at each other for 3 minutes, if we have 30 players and we do a 1v1 race and they have to cycle through 15 runs, by the time you come back to run one again, then nearly the 3 minutes will be up. So it's kind of messing around with it, and kind of the way you schedule the activity to occur as well can help you with the rest periods. But it's a really important feature. And Kieran.
No, that sums it up, and it's kind of how you lay it out. Your session is in the example of your groups of 2 and 15 rows. They're rested by the time they come around. Sometimes if you go in lines of even the 30 or even in lines of 10, or you kind of they've completed their rep, and then you're kind of standing there, and even as a coach, you're feeling awkward, going, "Oh, should I send them off again early?" Even though it's not full recovery, it is important that don't bite and set your session up where they're moving and they're observing, and it doesn't feel like they're standing around. But it is important to stick to that recovery, so we are developing that speed, and they can produce maximal reps with maximal intent.
Okay, the next one then, distance. Okay, so how we manipulate distance. All right, so program distance to target different sprint qualities. So what we're looking at, the shorter distance is 5 to 20 meters, is going to have an acceleration focus. Obviously going 5 meters and 10 meters is even going to be more about that kind of start phase. Okay, moving into 20 meters is kind of building up that bit more speed. And then 30 meters on to 60 and even above, probably not with a youth athlete, will be a max velocity focus. So we're giving them time to build up into their max speed phase. So how we program the distance is obviously going to have a target on the different sprint qualities. For a youth athlete, our focus would primarily be on acceleration, leading into maximum velocity, kind of leaning more heavily towards acceleration. And then this would be kind of a guidelines or a kind of idea on reps and sets and the likes. Okay, so what we'd be looking for is a total volume of between 100 to 300 meters, and that'll vary dependent on what the players have performed, their load that week, and their physical capacity. So can they actually can they actually take on that stress or that kind of training exposure? And what we'd probably encourage you to do is build up gradually. So maybe start with the younger athletes or a player that has a higher load. We'd err on the side of the lower volume. And then when we have opportunities, so like where we'd see a big opportunity to develop speed would be something like now or in an off-season program where the players aren't really being exposed to any other team activities and they can really focus on speed development. But again, just not telling you to go out tomorrow and round up the team and say, we're not doing anything else, let's go and run 300 meters of max speed. You're going to have to build that up gradually and slowly as well to expose them at the right progressive overload, I suppose is the word. How we have the reps and sets done. So you'd be looking at 10 meters, 5 to 6 reps. So that'd be a 10-meter run with a minute recovery. We could do 5 or 6 of them, and then so on and so forth. Again, we probably wouldn't, the higher the distance goes, the less reps we generally do. And then the last one, quality over quantity. We're never striving for hitting quantities. So like, if they're done or they're like, we're seeing that the shape is gone or they just look slow, stop it. They're either fatigued or something's not right there. Don't be like saying, well, I put down on the sheet tonight we're doing 250 meters, so we're definitely doing the 250 meters. In the luxury position where in pro sport or in some of the county squads where they have access to speed gates, they'll actually keep performing reps until the times fall off. So if we're hitting the 10 meters in 1.2 seconds or some number like that, it'll be until those numbers start increasing to 1.3 or a 10% increase on time that they'll say, all right, that's the session done. So it's kind of, there's various ways of doing it. Obviously, we don't have that, so we kind of have to go more so just on the general guidelines. But just keep an eye on it. If they look slow or they look like they're losing form or the mechanics or shape doesn't look good, pull it. You've done enough, like.
Just to come in there, lads, either one of you, Kieran or Paul, David, as I just asked, in between the reps, would you guys recommend stretching?
No, not for me. Any kind of your mobilization, activation work would have been kind of done in the earlier part. So if you're doing a 10-minute warm-up and then carrying over into your 50-minute warm-up into a 10-15 minute kind of acceleration speed focus, your kind of dynamic stretching type work would have been done in the earlier warm-up. Or if you have enough kind of experience as a coach just to kind of do a progressive gradual warm-up, using that ramp effect. But no, when you're kind of gone into your speed and acceleration, for me, I wouldn't be stretching in between reps. I'd be letting them recover and getting ready for the next rep. Just one or two things just to, Paul, before you jump in, just on what Paul was touching on there, kind of on that total volume, kind of your kind of pre-season, your max total distance might be 300, but that might come by week 5 or week 6. So you're building up with that kind of low volume of 100 and building towards your 300. For pre-season, you'd be looking at in around that maybe by week 5 or 6. And then in season, then the max you might ever go to is 150. So you're not going any higher than 150 when you're in your in-season. But again, it is important to gradually build up to that and not to overexpose the athlete, especially when we kind of come out of lockdown. Okay, kind of you're introducing speed, you'd probably kind of focus more on your acceleration over 10 and 20. Even if you have a hill to take speed out of it again, you kind of move to a hill and still over 10 or 20 meters or even to resisted work where you're not getting that player to chase 100% max intent in the first few sessions back, as we're probably most likely going to have a short window to either get ready for inter-county or for club. So it's important that we don't go from 0 to 100 speed-wise, as well as 0 to 100 on total volume. Sorry there, Paul, if you've anything else you want.
No, just on that one in relation to hills and resisted sprints there, Kieran, that they're really, really good in the start phase because they actually allow the player to hit maximal intent, but actually they just can't run that fast because they're being resisted. So they're trying to run up a hill, or they might have a sled pulling them back or something. So that actually reduces the risk of injury or risk of overload. So they're they're really, really good in that phase. I like hills are really good. There's a real protective effect on them. We all think about hill sprints or hill runs and we think, geez, they're conditioning, but actually when we prescribe rest and distance is right, they're actually a really good number one training tool for mechanics, and secondly then they have a protective effect because they don't let the athlete go full throttle because of the hill going up with the resistance.
But again, try and get your players to focus on speed now when they have time, so there is no issues when we get back together as a group.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on again. I'll hand it over to you, Kieran. You might just talk through this.
Yeah, so I'm just conscious of the time here. So yeah, just kind of some basic drill progressions. The four of us would kind of use in our sessions. Okay, so we've kind of phased them, but you don't necessarily have to stick to your phase. We do have the videos of them on YouTube in the next slide. So you're looking at your posture or your wall drills. Okay, just into every first exercise in each one, and the third exercise then is your progression. So you're making it more difficult for the athlete. It's becoming more dynamic or more unstable. So initially for the wall hold, you're just holding the position, progressing then to your switches, where you're left and right leg are scissoring on a coach's call, which then creates a wee bit of stability for the player to try and control. Kind of moving then into your resisted work. Okay, so kind of focusing on your acceleration mechanics again, getting in that forward lean into that horizontal position. Okay, then into your resisted knee drive, and then opening up into your sprint. And then you're kind of moving in then to your acceleration drills. So your different start positions you may experience. So just maybe focusing on that punch position, like what we discussed earlier, into your plyo step, both feet together. Coach says go, and the players would automatically go into that split stance, which is fine. Some coaches try and coach that out of it, but that's your quickest and natural step to fall back into. And then your lunge switch step is just really kind of focusing on getting into that acceleration, that forward lean, that knee punch through, pushing off your other foot. Okay, and then just going into your races, your walk-in starts, your chases, or your partner reactive. Okay, so in a session, you may use a drill from all. Okay, it's not a case of you do phase one, you go to phase two, and you never go back. You could have a drill from every phase in your speed session. Let's move to this.
Yeah, and as Kieran said, we went out this week and we tried to video as many of these activities as we could, and we've made a YouTube video that we'll show you the link of. Don't get too hung up on the form. We're a bit old to be trying to learn these new mechanics and shapes and stuff like this, or trying to model them perfectly, but it'll give you ideas of what we're looking for. I suppose a key thing here as well, and when you're watching the videos, is the first phase 1, 2, and a little bit into phase 3. It's kind of nearly interventions or kind of areas to kind of give an idea of what we want for the player to get. So like, you know, that wall hold, it's that forward lean that we're looking for. The resisted sprint, it's allowing me to fall into the run and kind of get that nice position, because I know that I have a resistance behind me that's kind of holding me up. And then some of the switches or the acceleration starts, they're nearly called, as Mike Young called them, they're foolproof. So by actually doing a few of these activities, they nearly automatically create the shapes we want the players to fall into. So lunge starts, lunge switch starts, one knee down starts, and the likes of this. As the players come up, they just look in good shape, and it kind of gets them used to that position. And then last one is just a bit of that competitive element to create that intent, the acceleration races.
And then you're just kind of moving into your max velocity drill. So you're kind of moving away from that horizontal focus more into your kind of cyclic action and more of a vertical force projection. Okay, again, some technical drills to work on that vertical phase, some bounding, again, looking for height, so looking for vertical, and then a small bit of horizontal as well. And then you're moving into your races, so you're just your different starts, just like games. You could be in a jog into a sprint. One I like is the kind of sprint float sprint. So you're accelerating or you're sprinting for 20, 30 meters, holding a constant pace, then taking it down to a lesser pace, and then picking it up again. And then your chases then is obviously your forward versus back, who can get there quicker. But again, it's very important that we've gone through the right phases. It's the right time of the session. It's the right time of the year to really open up the player. And first session back, you're not going to do a max velocity chase. You're probably not even going to do a rolling start. You're going to more focus on the slide previous, where it's more acceleration and with more technique work for your max velocity. But as the players get more exposure to it, and their training load and their speeds come up throughout the sessions, you kind of more then introduce your max velocity races.
Yeah, and that's probably another thing, is we'd probably have a focus of a session. So even when they're ready for either acceleration or max velocity, we'd actually keep both going, but we'd probably give them each a night. So Tuesday night could be acceleration and Thursday night could be max V, or even if you're only getting one exposure in the week, you might alternate weeks, like, or so on, depending on what their load is like. So
just a question coming in there, lads, in relation to some data on the way the sprints are initiated in games, and if that affects our training methods then, so from standing starts or not.
Yeah, so Damien Young had data on that details, and he's saying that sprints are initiated from all various positions, from lateral shuffles, from rolling starts, from reverse starts, from all different activities, from off the ground and everything. So what he's encouraging, and what we'd encourage, is that you start from various positions, or encourage it. And I suppose a key thing as well, what we're touching on here, is we're very aware that this is an isolated skill or attribute that we're trying to develop, and we're very aware that this won't happen in the match in the exact way we want it that is happening here. But there's an essence of treating speed development, acceleration, or max velocity similar to how we treat resistance training activities like squatting or any of these activities, that there's a knock-on effect that if we can improve our acceleration in its truest form, well then in the match situation, it'll be that bit better as well. If we can improve our max velocity, so the top end speed, well then we're going to have a higher bar that we can work within during the game. So it's not that we want to model exactly what's happening in the match and make sure that that's exactly how we train. We train beyond what happens in the match, because that makes us better prepared for the match. So I think that's a key thing to understand as well.
Yeah, no, exactly. Nothing more really to add to that. Just kind of next week, then we will kind of be touching more on kind of some of the stuff Paul mentioned there, lateral shuffle, crossovers, and kind of feeding into kind of more multi-directional speed. So working on those different start positions. And then just kind of to add on the slide here, just kind of your chases could be ball drills too. It could be defender chasing down a forward, going for goal, kind of recreating Owen Merchant's kind of scenario there, where they're chasing down over 40 meters with a shot. Like, you can feed them into drills, or if it's 30-meter kick pass and someone to get off the shoulder. So you can put your chases in that way too. And if you have GPS, you can say to the player, hey, you've only hit 80% here of your max, otherwise you're coming to do speed at the end, so go after that in your next drill. It's purposely set up for you to go after. So you can feed it into your drills as well. It doesn't necessarily just have to be two boys lined up to run.
Yeah, I suppose that's the one thing when we build in the ball, is just being aware of the rest periods, that they mightn't hit those same top end speeds or those same acceleration speeds. So it's definitely build it in. It's more a case of, it mightn't be its truest form or whatever, but it's still a key part of the game, obviously. Okay, so this is the page that we've made. So all the videos, so if they haven't played for you yet, through the presentations or even those pictures or those drills we've started creating a YouTube page for this. So we've called it GAA Athletic Development, and I'll send out a link I'll send out the link in an email after this. We don't really have to go into it. You all know how YouTube works. I've it built up into our playlist. So all the acceleration resisted drills, all the acceleration wall drills, and so on and so forth. So you can have a look at them and look at our power form as well. Again, don't get too hung up on our form. That's probably not ideal. It's more so to give you ideas. Okay.
You can use it as a critique session on the lads.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, no, just kind of some sample sessions, just pulling from the grids that were in the slides previous. Okay, so you can see how they progress kind of from easier drills to more advanced drills, so making it that wee bit more difficult on the player. So kind of with your wall marches to switches into your plyo steps and starts, or your phase 2 to focus on your forward lean and your knee drive. You may kind of make it more dynamic, obviously through your resisted work where they're marching forward, and then into your resisted sprints, and then your lunge step where you're really focusing on them nice acceleration positions, coming off the ground, staying low, watching that center of mass, striking behind the center of mass. Okay, and then you're kind of increasing your pace, so into your partner chases, so a chase from dead. Okay, where your phase 1 is kind of more of a gradual increase into your 20-meter sprint, so it's a walk-in start or a jog-in start, and then they're accelerating. Where for phase 2, it's from dead, so it's a hard chase, hard acceleration from dead.
Yeah.
And similar theme on the max velocity again. Okay, again, the kind of main thing to point out is the intensity of the chases. Okay, so phase 1, it's a rolling start. Okay, so it's on the player's own call, and it's not competitive, and the coach is just kind of coaching and encouraging the players. But then as we progress through our phase 2 might be week 5, week 6. Okay, again, you can see the partner races and the partner chases. So again, it's becoming that even more competitive. Players want to try and beat each other, which obviously leads to higher velocities achieved, which is the focus of what we're doing. But again, it's in phase 2, it's week 5, it's week 6, it's not from week 1. They've gradually got to deserve to do races. Okay, so it is important to really emphasize that it's a gradual build up, that the players got to earn the right to hit max velocity, and they got to earn the right to race and do chases. It's not from session 1, it's from week 5, week 6, when they've earned the right and they've gone through the right process to hit those max velocity numbers.
One last thing, lads, we haven't actually put it in a slide where this speed work fits in the session. So what we'd be recommending is that where in season particularly, that we microdose it. So we'd be saying like that, building in a 10-minute block in your session early in the session, as often as the sessions are occurring if possible. And that's what we recommend. Obviously, again, consider load on the players and what they've been up to. But in an ideal situation, or in that kind of ideal scenario where we've a game every weekend, Saturday or Sunday, and you're getting your 2 training sessions in the week, we'd be saying that, Tuesday could be your acceleration, and then Thursday could be your max velocity, or even next week when we're talking about agility and the likes, that you're building in another speed component into your Thursday session. But it's that kind of 10-minute, 15-minute block where we actually isolate this speed activity and really try to train it without building in other aspects of the game like the ball and the likes of that, is where we're going to get the best bang. And it's kind of we saw a good reference, or a good term, don't burn the steak. So it's kind of microdosing, given regular microdoses of this activity on a regular basis is going to improve the athletes, and it doesn't need to take over your session. In good warm-up, GAA 15 warm-up, which we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks, and then you early on in the session when the players have no fatigue, you get your 10 minutes, 15 minutes of this stuff in, and then the rest of the session is ready for ball, ready for condition games, activities, whatever you have planned. So that's kind of where we see it fit in. And that is the how. Just finally, this is a great term. The goal is to keep the goal the goal. Mick, do you want to explain that one?
Sorry. Yeah, basically, after the content that's been delivered, it's all very technical, and it can be overwhelming at the best of times. And the two lads have alluded to multiple times that let's keep the focus. Like, we're not looking for sprinters. We're not looking to create sprinters. At the end of the day, we're looking to get our players into space quicker. We're looking to get our players to the ball quicker, and we're looking to improve the players on the pitch. And at the end of the day, if our training interventions is helping our players get to the ball quicker, as I've just said, but therefore we're keeping the goal as the goal. So we have to take all these principles on board, but then we also have to remember at the end of the day we're developing GAA players, and that's the main focus of it. So it's a great quote really to summarise everything up, is at the end of it all we have to keep the goal, and we have to program these things as best we can into our training sessions in practically speaking.
Deadly. Finally, we just like to thank these various strength and conditioning coaches and different organizations. Altus is a world-renowned sprint organization for coach education. And Mike Young, who's this in the left-hand corner?
Derek Hansen.
Eric Hansen, Ken Clark, Cam Jossie, and the Strength Coach Network. All right, so these really, I suppose, they influenced our thoughts on the program. We've had some good chats over this. We've watched a lot of content, and Joe, we're continually building our prescription and our ideals on speed development. It is complicated. Well, it's not complicated. It is challenging. It is trainable, and it is, you are able to learn it, I suppose. What I'd probably recommend to kind of take away for me is try it out, be open to it. We can't, as often as I hear it off coaches, be asking how do we make players faster and then neglect it because we think it's too challenging. So speed is key, speed is trainable, and give it a go. Really, that's what I'd be recommending.
Yeah.
It's just to add to, obviously, the coaches on the slide, like they're kind of your gold standard for S&C coaches, or for coaches if you want to delve even deeper. Again, these are the bios. There's probably plenty more you could add in, but these are the boys that influenced our thoughts and influenced heavily the presentation of kind of put together our philosophy. So yeah, no, just a thank you to everyone who tuned in from me. And then there's a few references from a couple of papers that we mentioned on the next slide. But no, thank you from me. If there's any questions, you can fire them in and we get back to you.
Thanks, guys.
I'll just keep an eye on the chat box here if anything comes through.